Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron.
Kind of feel like if my memory is good and I'm remembering correctly, which I know it is, it's flawless. Maybe the last couple topics have been less technical, and so today I was going to throw out one that's more technical. You know, people love
Good.
code; they love hearing people talk about code. Dollar sign this arrow,
Mm-hmm.
all of that.
Wakes you up in the morning.
That's right, exactly. But one of the things that we had kind of hashed out on a code review on a previous project had to do with relationships, eloquent relationships, and whether or not those should include deleted or trashed records. And I know everyone is just like on the edge of their seat. This is super exciting. But no, it is kind of an interesting topic, I think. And we had some healthy debate back and forth. So let me just throw this out there and see if you have a general rule. Aaron, if you do, well, actually, you know what? We should probably set up a domain to talk about so that there's like an example people can get their heads around. And if unless you object, why don't we just use the one from our project? I think it's generic enough. It was a survey having to do with what not employment, but it had a thing called a job code, which might be like developer or engineer or
Sure.
something like that. Okay, so the main model was a survey, and it had a related table of job codes, and a particular survey had a particular job code. Does that make sense? Is that like a good enough example to talk through here?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So if I fetch
Having
a
worked on the project myself, I mean, I can tell you that it makes perfect sense to me.
That's right. If anybody else can't keep up, I mean, that's on them, right? Um, so if I fetch a survey and the job code, I do survey arrow job code, and it's trashed, like what should happen in your mind? Or
Well, the default thing is if that job code is trash, that'll be a null answer.
right, exactly. So I think that's sort of where this discussion started was like that clearly wasn't the behavior you want, right? Like you don't want if this record had data and the data's been trashed, soft deleted, like you should still show it, right?
Yeah, I've had
Yeah.
I've had people say like, well, that's why you should never do soft deletes. That's why you have a status
Oh,
column. And it's like, well, the soft deletes in a way is a status, and
yeah.
so instead of like hard deleting it, you're just saying that this record exists but it's no longer available. Its status is inactive is another way of looking at a soft delete.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, I personally I like soft deletes, and I think you kind of talked me into them when we first started working together. I wouldn't do the status active thing. I'd just like delete the record. Do you recall these discussions we had early on?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. If you firmly believe soft deletes shouldn't exist, then this whole episode will be you be further entrenched in your belief that this is a dumb idea. If not, then what's a good workaround? So in that case, you can override it, right? You can chain onto the relationship definition with trashed. You can bake that into the relationship definition. What are your thoughts there? Is like a way to do it that gives the desired result to the end user, but also has a good developer experience working in the code of the project.
I don't know if there's one right rule or anything like that, but I think that in general, I tend to think that those relationships and things like that are going to be honoring with trashed. And for the most part, if you want to do some sort of query or retrieve the data or whatever, you can still modify how it retrieves it. Like if you're doing like a with query, you can, pass a
Sure.
closure to it and then say that this with query is with trashed. The problem I have in there is it takes away some of the visibility or some of the clearness, and it takes away some of the magic. So when you always have to eager load things before you use it, and these aren't one to many, they're just like one to one, you
Right.
start to
Yeah.
lose some of the magic of just pointing at an item and saying, hey, that's what it is.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing wrong with doing it, quote, the harder way, but it just makes it a little bit harder.
Yeah.
The issue I have is when you have more of a relationship. Well, I guess it works both ways, but it usually happens with like a relationship of many things when you want to retrieve with trash along with that. later on you might pass this object to somewhere else, and so it has a thing like job codes or whatever, and
Yeah.
like the other thing won't know that some of those are deleted, not meant to be processed, and some of them
Yes.
are.
Okay.
So it's whenever you mix in a little change but the variable is still called the same, or the relationship still called the same, you can get into weird situations like that, which kind of scream to me like data leakage and security issues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So in order to be consistent, um there's I've changed my opinion. There's really no, I don't think there's really any easy way to have a relationship that has with trash on it sometimes, unless it's always with trashed and it's named such a way that it indicates that,
Mm.
because the majority of your relationships are not with trashed.
Yes.
So if you say cars and you say Jack in the Boxes and you say job codes, which one of those is the one that's going to contain trashed? I don't
I gotta
know.
say Jack in the Boxes because that.
I don't know.
uh,
Maybe I'm hungry. But I think there's an alternative. So if you really are using something
mhm.
so frequently with trashed and it's like not something you can take out, because remember, you can still grab properties off an object, and you can grab, use Eloquence tools to get a trash relationship, assign those to properties, and then pass though, like to variables. So you could say like, I'm going to retrieve this survey, and I'm going to just grab the survey ID off of it, and I'm
Mhm.
going to retrieve this job code and just grab the label, and then you could just pass in
Sure.
the ID and the label, and not use that model anymore. Well,
Okay.
then, although it's kind of a dirty and it's not a perfect model, there's really no confusion because you're not moving it forward in the life cycle. You're
Yeah.
just putting in some properties. But if you're going to do this trash all the time, I think it makes sense to make a relationship that indicates it's trashed, like job codes with trashed, or
Yeah.
all available job codes or something.
So, one of the distinctions I heard you make, and I agree with, is it's different if it's like in our example, survey arrow job code. It's a single required field, right? That's there versus maybe let's say client is where the job codes that are available for that client are defined. Client arrow job codes, that feels different, making it include trashed items than survey arrow job code. Like, is
Yeah,
that a
I mean,
correct
you're
distinction?
right, but I would say different as in worse. So I'm saying it's already bad enough for the arrow job code to be a trashed model.
Okay.
Because if that's the case, that means that every time I use a relationship or a single thing, I then have to check the Boolean trashed method on them,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't, if it was like if I'm going to use that for something, I have to check every relationship, because it's not clear which relationships are going to be a single trashed item versus a non-trashed item.
Yeah, interesting. So I um I wonder if context also matters like in the domain. So for example, if every survey must have a job code and job codes are a thing that are frequently managed and you know they're going to kind of come and go, does that change your opinion at all? Like just kind of knowing the data and how it's managed?
No,
Because no, okay.
in that one, I think I would have two relationships. I would have job code, which
Hmm.
is just a standard relationship that honors deleted ones, and I would have display job code or something like that, which is
Okay.
that same relationship but with trashed,
Hmm.
so that I know that if I want to deal with a real model, if it exists, it's on job code.
Yeah.
And if I just want to have the information to display it, it's going to be on the one called
Oh,
display, which may not necessarily be a trash or untrashed model. It's something that I'm clearly saying is not for use in the rest of the domain.
yeah, I kind of like display better than putting trashed in the name. I don't know, at least for the one-to-one relationship.
Mhm.
For the one-to-many, like, all job codes or job codes with trash, I forget what you came up with. Like
Yeah.
that seems less bad to me. It also seems like less useful. Like you wouldn't reach for that as much. Whereas in the survey job code, like you
Mhm.
really I think it's actually more rare that you would need to know or care if it's trash or not. Maybe my thinking is too short sighted, but you know what I mean. Like it, and maybe it's because I'm thinking about displaying it, but and maybe you're thinking more about editing it or making other changes to it that could
I,
actually
I'm
matter if it's trashed or not.
I think the difference is I'm thinking of it in a decoupled mode, and you're
Okay,
thinking about it in the context of the
yeah,
application.
right.
That's great if you do a lot of greenfield projects, like,
Mhm.
some of the projects we've had that you worked on other projects that I've primarily taken on, which have been older Laravel applications.
Yeah.
There's a lot. Context doesn't matter because it was a bunch of different developers, and so
Right.
no one really remembers or understands what the rule is for this class.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's probably why this is such a difficult one to make a global rule for, because it
Yeah,
is so team specific. So maybe like within a team, just agree on what it's going to be. Um, and yeah, the element of least surprise, I've heard it described when trying to design an API or something like that. That applies here. Like, don't do something that maybe is convenient in the particular use case where you're doing that work and making that decision, but then it like is confusing a year from now to some other developer that has joined the team and it's like, well, why would you include trash on this one relationship but not on this other one, like that, so I think that's a valid point. I know I mentioned we recently went on a family road trip,
Mhm.
and one of the goals, like our final destination, was the Grand Canyon. Right, I had never been there. In fact, most of the people in the family haven't been there. um, but along the way down, on the way back, we kind of took our time, and one of the things we wanted to do was hit some national parks, like on the way there and the way back.
Sure.
And I think in total we hit, I say hit, that sounds a little too aggressive. We stopped at, we enjoyed the majesty of, um,
You spread germs too.
spread germs to 5 or 6. I can't remember now. Um, but anyways, our youngest who is 9 really was not having fun. In fact, I have a nice collection of photos where he's just like laying down at national parks. Like there's one he's laying down in front of this like just awesome vista of the Grand Canyon. Anyways,
Was he
so
planking?
like after the no, that would have been cooler. This was like the laying down out of sheer boredom and like I just don't want to be here.
I see it's like father like son because you said that would have been cooler, implying that the first thing was at least somewhat cool.
All right, you got me. Yeah, no, I just planking would have been at least a little more interesting. It would have been a little dated, but anyways, um, so I think it was the second park we stopped at. I was trying to get in his head, like why don't you think this is cool? Some of it's being young,
Yeah.
and he's like, Dad, there's like no playgrounds at these parks. There's like no slides. There's nothing. Because in his mind, when I say if we're at home,
Park.
hey, we're
Yeah.
going to the park, he's not thinking of like the trees or maybe the nature there. There's like something to do, fun to play on. And so by the end of it, he had gotten over that misconception, but it just like was cracking me up at first. And because I was getting frustrated, I'm like, we're spending this money and this time to go all these awesome places, and you're like bored. I'm like, what is wrong with you? But
Where is the swings?
yeah, exactly. The Grand Canyon, you can look high and low. There is not any swings or slides there.
We talked about the ease of use and confusion that could come with, having inconsistent relationships, but there's also a security aspect to some of this stuff. And we really like to focus on security.
In fact, we put together a free ebook with some security tips. You can find it at masteringlaravel.io and just navigate to the security section.